Each week on this channel, I give myself a new challenge. Last week's was trying cosplay for the first time. This week is gonna be a whole lot different. I'm a scuba diver, but I'm a beginner, and I'm challenging myself to go on my first solo dive. Okay, don't try this. This video has a message that's only for myself, and it's kind of, think of it like a public journal. I don't know how to talk to anyone about this stuff, so don't think that I'm talking to you, please. Personal challenge, you're just looking into my mind, okay? I am a shallow water recreational diver. And if you were to separate out all the individual aspects of being that, there's a lot more stuff than I have written here. There's a lot more than 4 aspects to it. But for the sake of example, you need to know a few really critical things. If your mask fills with water, you need to be able to clear it underwater so that you can see again. You need to know how to control your buoyancy because you don't want to hit the bottom if you're swimming over something that you could damage by touching it. You don't want to damage it. Or even just silt and sand on the bottom that would get kicked up and now you can't see. So you have to be able to just hover. Hand signals, equalizing your ears as you go down. These are all aspects of shallow water recreational diving, and they're great skills to know. I've been reading a book called Shadow Divers about these guys that make discoveries that most people could not make. These guys are some of the best in the world at doing deep water shipwreck diving. The fact that anyone out there is even doing this, I find nuts. Breathing stuff that isn't even compressed air. Going over 200 feet deep, diving in the ocean. Never done it. Really want to go do that. I can't tackle this whole cardboard sheet as a challenge. That doesn't even make sense with someone at my experience level. The learning curve of this would crush me. But again, to be able to separate out each individual aspect of this whole puzzle, trying to control the intensity of that learning curve. Hopefully in the future, I might be able to become the most competent diver that I can be. This week, I'll be cutting out this piece in the bottom left corner, solo diving. It's likely my biggest challenge yet that I've ever given myself, and I'm gonna give myself an easy one next week to kind of recover mentally. Shadow Divers is just one book about one group of heroes that I look up to very much. Another group is in a movie called 13 Lives that if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. And it's about a group of some of the best cave divers in the world that came together and absolutely using unorthodox means saved a group of people that were trapped in a flooded cave when the consensus was that they were not going to survive and there was no way to save them. These are guys that make miracles happen just because they really know what they're doing. And I really feel like some of the most inspiring stuff to me is at the same time very foolish. What are you gonna do? Without risking my own life, I want to challenge myself this week to put myself in a situation to really think about and feel these stories on a new level. To try and imagine being in these guys' shoes, even though a diver at my level truly can't imagine being a character in one of those 2 stories. And again, not trying to risk my life this week. I went to a dive location that my dad told me about that he dove 40 years ago with a group of his dive buddies. There's a problem though, and it's that there are always a bunch of people swimming around during the day because it's summer. What are you gonna do? And I worried a little bit that that would be a distraction to me, having a bunch of people jumping in around me, trying to talk with me. It just felt like it didn't make a lot of sense for me to put on all my gear and go out there in this crowded area. So this dive pretty quickly became a night dive. So that's worse. I ran into this certified scuba guy. He told me that it was safe.
I've been here for 40 years, man. When I went to college here in 1978, that was non-existent, but that frame right there at the bottom, that was just there. It was an old ice house. Underneath there, there's no serious current. You can come underneath there, there's ponds, used to be ponds about this long, shrimp type thing, but it's pretty safe.
So I went to my dive shop. Every diver's got a dive shop. I rented gear and then came back at night. I showed up on site at about 10:30 p.m. and it was a lot darker than I thought it would be.
It's so dark.
And I was surprised to find that a handful of people were still out there just doing their own thing.
So during the day, people will jump off the waterfall. But I ate at the restaurant earlier today and the waiter told me that they used to have people jump from up there where all those string lights are. And they wouldn't make it far enough out and the current would push them in. And there was a guy that did die under there about 2 years ago. And that's why they put all these metal rods up there, and they put a whole screen up so people couldn't jump from up top anymore. Oh my gosh, the current is so strong. No, I'm not joking. Put your feet in this.
Oh, it's a little cold. It's pretty strong.
I can break down my dive minute by minute. Minute 1, I went under, made sure that my watch timer was counting up, and decided that this pillar was my home base. And if for any reason I was gonna lose track of where I was, I'd find this spot and know that the first way for me to surface is to my right and would have me walk out the way I came in. And the second way I could surface would be to my left, where I placed about 5 feet of rope in the water, which shouldn't be too hard to find, and would help me hopefully have something to hold on to with the current rather than just the side of those rocks. Minutes 2 to 3, I decided to swim over to the left to see if I could spot the rope. But I felt the current over there was much stronger than I expected it to be and kind of made me uneasy because first it tried pulling me forward and then it tried pulling me to the left and to the right. Kind of felt like it was not sure where it wanted to pull me, like I was right at the crux of this spot where the current was like splitting, and I didn't like it. And I also didn't know 100% where I was because I didn't see the rope, even though I was probably within 3 or 4 feet of wherever the rope was. And so I just sunk an extra foot to the bottom and grabbed rocks to take myself back to the pillar. So back in my pillar, I looked under the building and wished I had a more powerful handheld light because the beam on my light only showed me about 4 feet forward. So it kind of appeared like I was looking into an absolute abyss. Then I quickly thought, for their sanity, there's no way that other divers look up to stare out into the nothingness. I mean, I could be wrong, but I imagine if I was in a shipwreck, you're looking at what your light can touch, not up at what you can't see. Here I am underneath this little building, looking up, imagining a snake or something just coming face to face with me, or like an alligator being back there. Totally unreasonable. So I looked around at the walls and the rocks and fish kind of just breathed. I even poked a fish and it did nothing, so I poked it again and it kind of like activated. Yeah, I probably only made it like 4 feet under the building. And then I turned around and I swam to the front of the pillar again. Minutes 4 to 5, biggest thing here is that I look up to see where the waterfall was hitting the surface. As I looked up, the current kind of hit the top of my head and pulled the 360 camera off my head, and I caught it and realized, okay, I need to hold on to this constantly if I don't want to lose it. Then I made a mental note. As a videographer, I'm realizing I not only need to have a way to have both my hands free, which I've learned in past dives, like I don't want to have a camera in either of my hands, but I need wherever my camera is on me to be completely impossible to escape me. It said the best divers know to only carry a really cheap knife. That way there's no inclination that if it were to get away from you, you're gonna go after it. Because a lot of divers have actually died doing this. A camera is the perfect example of something that I would have an immediate reaction to go after, and that's not good. So I kind of grabbed a rock at the bottom and thought for a second about how I really wish right then I had one of those helmets that was strapped to my head that cave divers wear that protects them from like their head hitting rocks and things like that. But you can also bolt your camera to the front of it and then just not have to worry about it at all. Minutes 6 to 7, I looked down and my light went out. Not kidding, my heart kind of seized up for a second on me. And I stopped floating, and I was probably like back to hovering 1.5 feet over the bottom, just like working on my buoyancy, staying below the current. The moment that light went out, I just like grabbed at the bottom again and was pausing to try to think. Again, the bottom is where it's calmest. And so I'm down there and I feel like an idiot. Of course I should have packed a backup light. Next thing I thought was, of course I should have a backup mask. I shouldn't go on a dive without a backup light and a backup mask. These are examples of if you're doing the buddy system and you have another diver there and something like this goes wrong, you might be able to stay calm and stay steady, and they'll notice that there's something up, that you're just like hanging around there, or that you don't have a mask on your face, or that your light is off or something. If they find you, they can help you. If you're diving solo for any reason, you have to have your backup options. Like, it immediately struck me that I felt like an idiot. Not being able to see is the worst. So I made a mental note of both of those things: backup light, backup mask. And after a few moments, I became really happy that it turned out it was a full moon tonight, which was not planned. I was starting to be able to see my hands and the rocks that I was holding onto, even though it was really dark. A dim space where you can make out shapes is infinitely better than a pitch black space of nothingness. I saw I had a wall next to me, my point of reference pillar next to me, and I was happy that I didn't actually venture far away from it for this very moment. And then I reached a point where I felt basically fully calm. I felt like I knew where the way out was. And I decided to reach back and feel for my light to see if it got blown off of my head completely. And I couldn't believe it, but the rubber strap that I put my light on had come loose, flailed around, and lodged itself just a little bit behind my head. So my light didn't actually leave my head or shut off. It was blocked because it was facing directly into me. Now for the rest of the dive, I'm swimming with one hand, and with my other hand, I'm holding on to both the light and the camera on top of my head. So I'm thinking, now what do I do with this? First of all, I know that I don't want to swim in the current over by the rocks, trying to find the rope and all of that with one hand. That immediately seems more dangerous, and there's just no reason for it. So I'm thinking of the one way that I plan to get out of the water, and that is the way that I came in. And in some of this footage, you might see that the light kind of goes in and out, and that's me moving my hand away for a second and realizing that I really have to hold it constantly because that light is ready to just go all over the place, which really sucked. And this was my new situation. Minute 8, time really flies, and my footage shows that I was already 8 minutes and hadn't gone beneath the building yet, more than like 3 or 4 feet. So I tried for a second time to build the courage to go deep underneath the building. I was suspended about a foot, maybe a foot and a half from the bottom. I did a few little frog kicks forward, and because of my breath, I raised up in the water between 6 inches and a foot. In the current, I felt it catch me a little bit, mainly like all the gear attached to me on my back and everything. And it pushed me forwards into the unknown, and I just scrambled. I scrambled to grab another rock. The amount of times that I've just reached for rocks down here. I mean, it makes sense because there's a current right above me, but am I scuba diving or am I like underwater rock climbing? I'm like once again grabbing the bottom thinking like, I am not going in here. I am not going back into this abyss. And I went to try to like prep for my exit out near the waterfall so that I would just be ready to get out. Minutes 9 through 11 and a half, I noticed that my camera was not on my head anymore. This was like the thing that I did not want to lose. I'd already thought about all of this, like frustrating moment. I was instantly mad, which isn't good, right? Like now I'm underwater, I'm angry. I'm like, I've got to find this camera. I'm looking down at my watch, feeling up against a wall, completely up against a wall, because I've got less than a minute before I'm supposed to be exiting. And I started swimming around and looking for it, already kind of believing that there's no way that I find this camera. At the 10-minute mark, I'm not in position to exit the water. A moment later, I look down and see that I was already at 11 minutes. So I got out of the water at 11 and a half minutes, giving up on my camera. And you wouldn't believe it, but I felt it hanging on the top of my air tank at the back of my head. I flipped out. I'm counting this as a failed challenge. Not because I didn't swim deep enough beneath the building. That wasn't even the main goal. The main goal was simply to do a 10-minute solo dive and then surface. But I delayed my ascent time because I wanted to look for my camera, and in scuba, I need to have that locked into my brain as one of the most serious mistakes that I can make. Always respect your ascent times and decompression stops. It hurts me to say that this was a failed challenge this week, because I put a lot of effort and thought into it, and still, it is what it is. I don't really feel any desire to do another solo dive anytime soon. I don't have one planned, and I could easily go 100 or 200 more dives without doing another solo dive. And the point isn't to become a solo diver. That's not any sort of goal that I have. The goal is experience, and I wanted to do it in a safe enough way where, I only entered that water because I saw myself coming out. And the dive location that I picked, I felt confident in that. And I think I got enough experience in this dive to chew on for a while. Thank you so much for watching. Every week I give myself a new challenge, and if you want to watch a much more lighthearted video, you can click this one on the screen where I tried cosplay for the first time, and subscribe for more future videos.